Hello friends, it's Lisa and welcome to my 2024 reset vlog. So I've been doing these reset vlogs kind of monthly the past few months and I love doing them, and I thought with a new reading year ahead of us it made sense to do another reset vlog for the start of the year. I just want to start my reading year on the right track, so I figured sitting down and doing this reset vlog might be a good way to share these things that I want to do throughout the year and also just like hold myself accountable to start my year off right. So we are going to be chatting about my reading goals for 2024. I also do a bit of a book unhaul because I feel like the beginning of the year I'm just like in a cleansing mood. I just want to get rid of everything that isn't serving me, and naturally I started with my books because of course. So we are going to go through my books and decide which ones I can let go of, whether they are books I've read already or on my TBR, but we're also going to share some books that I want to read this year. Some books that either are on the chopping block at a risk of an unhaul, or just some books that I'm excited to get to and want to try and read this year. But yeah, these are the things that I'm just kind of like thinking of and wanting to do at the beginning of the year, at the beginning of a new reading year. So I figured I would take you along with me, share with you all of these things, and let us just get into the reset vlog. Okay, so first thing for this reset vlog, I think it makes sense to go over my goals for the year, because my goals and just like things I want to keep in mind for the whole year are definitely going to influence my unhaul, my TBR, and just like my reading year in general. So I feel like it makes sense to start the year off, start this video off chatting about my goals. So first and foremost, Goodreads and Storygraph, the reading challenge. What number am I trying to get to of books read this year? So for the reading challenge this year, I set my goal to 60 books. I'm pretty happy with that number. This is actually the first year where I've set my reading challenge number less than the previous year. I've always gone up in my reading challenge from year to year, whether that's by like one book or 5 books or wherever it may be. I've always increased my goal, but this is the first year I've decreased it. But that kind of goes hand in hand with one of my other goals, which is quality over quantity. I just want to read good books this year. I feel like my reading years, especially in 2023, but kind of in 2022 as well, I've read a lot of books, which is great, but I've also read a lot of books I thought were just okay. And this year I really want to prioritize reading books that I'm just really enjoying and excited about, and not worried so much about hitting a certain number read at the end of the year, or even at like the end of a month. Like, I don't care how many books I'm reading. I just want to be enjoying what I'm reading. I think because I also am creating videos and like, well, I was gonna say creating Instagram posts, but like, do I post to Instagram that much? Not really. Mostly YouTube videos centered around books. I feel like I always need to be reading so many things and so many new things. Like, I can't be talking about the same books vlog to vlog because that's boring. That's not interesting. Or, you know, my wrap-ups aren't going to be interesting if I don't have 10 books. If I'm only talking about 4 books, that's not as great. That's not as interesting for people to watch. I've just fallen into this thing of like, my videos aren't going to be interesting unless I'm talking about new books all the time, or I have a ton of books to talk about. And that's just, I don't think, true. And if it is true for some people, that's okay. There are so many other creators who read so many things in so many, like, they'll have one vlog where they read 10 different things and their wrap-ups will be like 20 plus books long. And that's great. That will never be me. And I'm not trying to say that people who do that are wrong either. It just is totally dependent person to person. It does not matter how many books people are reading month to month. And I think I've just allowed like the videos that I want to create and put out, and just like anything to do with my videos, I've been letting that dictate my reading instead of letting my reading dictate my videos. And I feel like therefore I've been trying to rush through books and just get more books read so that my wrap-ups are more interesting and my vlogs are more interesting, or I'm picking up books that I wouldn't be reading unless I was reading it for a certain video. And I just want to read what I want to read. And I want to be reading good books, and I don't want to be trying to reach a certain number. I just want to be enjoying what I'm reading. It sounds so stupid saying it out loud. Like, it should not be this difficult to just read books. But I think just factoring in that I create videos around books, it does add this extra layer of pressure, or just like, I don't know, expectations with what I should be reading. And I just don't want to do that. I want to read what I want to read, and then we will create the vlogs and the videos surrounding those things instead of letting the videos dictate my reading, if that makes sense. So there may be vlogs where I only read one book in the vlog instead of 3 different things or 5 different things. Or, you know, I might start a vlog and then the next time I start a new vlog, I might be reading the same books. But that's okay. If I'm enjoying these books and I'm enjoying the reading experience, I think that that's really what is important. So that's my goal. That's like my main goal for the year, is quality over quantity. Reading books I'm enjoying, books I'm loving, over trying to get a certain number or making my content more interesting. I just want to read books that I like. That's it. So that's like the biggest thing that I really want to focus on this year. But I do have some other things that are important or just things that I want to keep in mind throughout the rest of the year. So one being I want to read more of my physical and Kindle TBR. I think I have like 50 books on my physical TBR, which depending on who you are, that might be a lot, that might be a little. For me, it's a lot. I try to keep my physical TBR under 50 books because if it exceeds that, I get overwhelmed with too many options and then I don't make a choice and I end up reading things on my Kindle or through Libby or something. I don't end up picking up the books on my physical TBR because I'm overwhelmed by choice. So I know myself, I need to keep my TBR, my physical TBR, a little bit more limited, but we're also doing an unhaul in this video and I know there's books that I'm going to unhaul that I've had sitting on my TBR that I've just forgotten about or have lost interest in, and I just don't want that to happen. I don't want to be buying books and then having them sit on my shelf for years and years and then lose interest and then get rid of them. Like that just seems so pointless. So I do want to prioritize my physical TBR this year, read the things that I'm excited about, read some things I've had on that physical TBR for years and check them off and get them read, especially the things that I'm maybe going to potentially lose interest in. I just want to read what's on my physical TBR. I'm not trying to get my physical TBR down to 0, but I do want to condense it quite a bit, especially because I know I'm going to keep buying books throughout the whole year. I can't do a book buying ban. I mean, maybe I should, but probably won't. I don't think that will work for me. So I need to be actually reading the things that I'm buying. An idea. And my Kindle TBR, I just like forget that I have things on my Kindle TBR. So I'm not trying to get anything specific, like a specific number of books on my Kindle read. I just want to actually like remember that I have things on my Kindle and actually read them. So that's really where that goal comes in. My next goal is something that I have in mind and is a goal every single year. It's just something that I've written down to actually hold myself accountable, and that is to read diverse stories from diverse authors. I feel like in 2023, I didn't read from as many BIPOC authors as I would have liked. So that's something that I definitely want to keep in mind this year. But I think last year I read some books with like disability rep and also of course just like general LGBT plus books. Like that's something that I feel like I did okay with last year, and that's something I want to continue on with this year. It's just a goal that I just always want to have and want to be diversifying my reading. I don't want to be reading the same types of books from white authors all the time. It's just an important thing to always keep in mind. So of course that's a goal for this year. Another goal that I have is to actually allow myself to DNF. I had this goal last year to allow myself to DNF, and I did not DNF a single book last year, even though there were multiple books I read last year that I had the thought I should DNF this. I don't care. I'm not interested, or I'm just not feeling this book right now. I should just put it down and pick it up later. But I just didn't do that. I forced myself through a few different books and they ended up in my most disappointing books video. So realistically, I need to be better about allowing myself to DNF, whether that's individual books or series, because another one of my goals is to finish and get caught up on a lot of the series that I've started. But there's a lot of series that I've started that I don't have an interest in finishing. So I have a hard time not completing things. It's kind of a problem. Once I start something, I'm like, I have to see it through to the end. And that comes with, you know, finishing books or finishing series. But there's so many books and so many series that I don't think I need to finish. So actually allowing myself to DNF these things this year and then move on to books that I will actually enjoy is definitely something I want to do this year. But I also do have a lot of series that I've started that I am excited to finish and I do want to get caught up on or finish this year. So that is another goal. I think it's just going to be a goal for the rest of my life to finish and get caught up on series. I'm really good at starting series and not finishing them. Another thing I'd like to do this year is also reread some of my favorite books. I have a lot of books and a lot of series that I love, and I love rereading books, but then there's a part of me that always feels guilty because I'm like, well, I film videos about books. Is it interesting to hear me talk about books I've already read? But I also read for myself, not just for videos. So if there's something I want to revisit, I'm gonna do that this year. I know specifically I've been wanting to reread the Ember and the Ashes series by Sabaa Tahir since I read the series for the first time in 2020, but really in like end of 2021, I was like, ooh, I would love to reread this series. And have I done that? No, because I always prioritize new books over that, but I would love to revisit that story, be back with those characters. It's one of my favorite series of all time, so I would really love to reread that this year. We will see. There's also a lot of things I'd love to reread. If you want a whole video on things I'd like to reread, let me know, because there's a very extensive list of things I would love to reread. And then there's also books I just feel like I'm kind of on a constant loop of rereading. Once I finish a reread, I'm like, well, I guess I could reread it again. So if you want to see a video of all the things I'd like to reread this year, or just like in general over the next few years, let me know. My next goal is to read at least one classic. Now, I know most of my reading this year, I'm going in with the vibe of like, I just want to read what I want when I want, and that's what we're going to be doing. So if I'm not in the mood for a classic at any point throughout the year and I don't complete this goal, I'll be okay with it. But reflecting back on my 2023 reading year, I realized I did not pick up a single classic, and there are a lot that I want to read. So I figured trying to read at least one of the ones that's on my list of classics I'd like to get to would be a good thing to maybe keep in mind. But again, if I don't get to it because I'm not in the mood for a classic at all at any point this year, then that's okay. And so my final goal for the year is to not be intimidated by big books. This again goes with my quality over quantity thing. I always would, put off reading bigger books because I was like, well, this book is like 600 pages. I could read 2 300-page books in that time. And then I would do that. And then, some of those books I wouldn't even be that excited to read, but because they were shorter and it was more books read at the end of the month or the year, I would do that instead of reading a book that might take me a little bit longer, but I'm more excited to read. So this year I really want to pick up the books that are quite long on my TBR. They might be big, they might be intimidating, but I want to read them. There's one specifically that we will talk about with my TBR that I really want to read this year, but I have a lot of books that are over like 400 pages, which to me is a big book. If it's over 400 pages, that's what I'm considering a big book. And I have a lot of those on my TBR and I want to read them. There is a reason they are on my TBR. There's a reason I bought them. There's a reason I own them. So I would like to get to some of the bigger books on my TBR and not be intimidated to read them just because of how many pages it has. So those are my goals for the year. It might seem like a lot, but really I just want to prioritize reading what I want when I want this year and quality over quantity. So those are the most important things for me to keep in mind. Everything else is just kind of like extra. If I can do it, I will do it, other than reading diversely. That's very important and I will be doing that this year. But really, I just want to set myself up to have a successful reading year and just enjoy what I read. And that's what's really important. So yes, I have all these goals, but just enjoying what I'm reading is like the biggest goal for 2024. Okay, ignore the appearance. We are comfy. She doesn't have makeup on. She has her glasses on. It's cozy, that's the vibe. Basically, I just really need to do this unhaul. It's been something I've been wanting to do the past few weeks because it's now January 18th. So I've been really wanting to do this since the start of the year, and I've been waiting for this video or like starting to film this video. We just need to get it done. I have a stack of books that's on my bedside table of books I've read recently and also books that I have hauled and acquired recently. There's a mix of things that need to go on these shelves, the red books, and books I need to add to my TBR shelf. But I didn't want to do that until I've done this unhaul because then I would just be continuously reorganizing my bookshelves unnecessarily. So I just figured do the unhaul, then organize. That makes sense, right? Okay. Yeah, so we're going to be doing a bit of an unhaul. I want to get rid of some books that I've read, just books that are on my shelves that I just feel like I'm never really going to revisit. I don't really feel like I need to keep them on my shelves. And then there's also some books on my TBR that I'm definitely going to unhaul, which I normally don't do that. I normally try to give books a chance at least once they've been on my TBR. Like I don't really unhaul TBR books, but I just have books on there that I've had for years and I just don't have an interest in reading anymore. So we're going to do a bit of both, but we're going to start with the shelves of the red books. I also do just want to say I may be getting rid of some books that have been gifted to me from friends and family, and if any of those friends and or family are watching, still love you. I just don't want these books anymore. And I would never want someone to hold on to a book or just anything really that I've given them just because I've given it to them, whether it's not, giving them joy anymore, they don't need it, they don't want it. I would want people to just get rid of things that they don't want, regardless of if I gave it to them or not. So I know people have unhauled books that I've given them and it's totally fine. So I hope that none of my friends and family are upset with me. But yes, we're going to start with my bookshelves with all of my red books and things I'm going to get rid of. I'm just going to start going across all of the shelves. I already see something I want to get rid of. I think I'm going to unhaul The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli. I read this a couple years ago. I could not tell you a single thing about this book. I think, if I had to guess, I think the main character's name starts with an M. Oh my god, it's Molly. I'm so smart. She remembers books. But that's really all I remember. I remember liking it enough, it was fine. I don't really feel like I need to keep this on my shelf. It's nothing that I'm going to ever revisit. I do have Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda still on my shelf because even though I don't necessarily think I'll reread that book, I'm happy to have that book a part of my collection. I just want to keep it for my collection. So I'm happy to keep that one. This one, however, I don't really care. Which that may have sounded meaner than I meant. It's just not a book that I have ever thought about since reading it, and it was just fine. Not super memorable for me, so I don't think I need to keep it. Okay, I also think I can get it off the shelf without things toppling over. A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow. First of all, this cover. Beautiful. That's like part of the reason why I've kept it so long. I read this, when did this come out? 2020? 2021? I don't remember. However, I liked this book. I thought it was enjoyable. A similar thing, like I liked it enough. I remember thinking that the like conversations that were being had in this book were really powerful and really important. And I liked that it had to do with like mermaids and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just don't think that this was necessarily like my type of book. I enjoyed it enough, but I definitely didn't love it. And so I think it's time for this to leave my shelf. Okay, there's gonna be, I feel like, a lot of YA contemporary just because this isn't really my favorite genre anymore. I don't really read a ton of it anymore, so if I'm going to keep a YA contemporary, it's gonna be like one of my all-time faves. So I think Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson is also gonna go. I only read this recently, actually. I read this over the summer in 2023, and I liked it. Again, I think it was like a 3.5 star rating, which I think is like basically the same rating I gave those other two books. It was just fine. That's really it. I feel sad for past me who didn't discover Morgan Matson when she was in her YA contemporary era. Like when I was in middle school and high school, I loved YA contemporary, which makes sense. I was the target audience for it then, but I really wish I had read her books then because I think I would have loved them. Unfortunately, like at this point, I thought it was enjoyable enough. It was a quick read. It was fine. I just don't think I need to keep it. I think everything else on that top shelf I'm going to keep. Maybe someday I will be able to unhaul Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell because I know. However, when I read that book in like 2015 maybe, it meant a lot to me, so I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to get rid of it. Okay, I think I'm going to get rid of Watch Us Rise by Renee Watson and Ellen Hagen. This I enjoyed. Again, I think I might have given this 3.5 stars. There's a common theme. Another very fine YA contemporary. I think especially knowing that this is targeted towards a younger audience, I think the introduction of different like feminist ideas, it was really well done in this book, but I just thought it was fine. I think especially reading this as an adult, like it didn't introduce me to anything that I necessarily didn't already know, or I don't know. It was fine. I think for the intended audience, this was really great. Obviously, that is not me, and I'm aware of that. And I thought it was fine. I liked Renee Watson and her character that she wrote more than Ellen Hagen. I think that was the thing, too, that I had a problem with, is I could very much tell when one author was writing versus the other, and there was definitely a preference on my end. Yeah, it makes me excited to potentially check out more from Renee Watson in the future, but I thought this was just fine. I would recommend it towards a YA audience, which is what it is intended for. But for me, in my old hag era age, it was just not like my favorite, but I think I gave it like 3.5 stars, so not bad, just not my favorite. I think that I'm going to get rid of Room by Emma Donoghue. I read this in 2017, I think, soon to be a major motion picture. The movie hadn't even come out yet. I was ahead of the curve. But I did like this book when I read it. I think I gave it 4 stars, so a higher rating than the other books that I've unhauled. I just don't think I'm ever going to revisit or reread this story. That plays a factor into what books I keep on my shelves, whether they're just favorites, things I want to keep a part of my collection, or I could see myself rereading and revisiting in the future. I don't think I'm ever going to revisit this, and if I do, I'll watch the movie, which like I do want to do at some point, but this is kind of a sad story, so like I don't think I'm just gonna want to revisit it for that reason also. But yeah, I enjoyed this book when I read it a few years ago. I don't know if I'd feel the same about it now. I really don't know, but I liked it then. It's just not a book that I am going to revisit, so I don't think I need to keep it a part of my collection. I think it's time to say goodbye to Truly Devious. It's time. I thought this series, again, was fine. I ended up reading the second and third books as like ebooks, I think. I did a whole like 24-hour readathon reading this series, and that was a fun experience. It was fun reading the books back to back, but I didn't love the series enough to want to like buy the second and third books to be a part of my collection, and I just don't really feel the need to hold on to this book. If I do want to revisit this series, I'm happy to do it through my library, through an ebook, through an audiobook, whatever it may be. I don't think I'm going to, so I don't really feel like I need to keep this, but yeah, I thought the series was fine. I definitely don't plan on continuing the series. I have heard not the best things about the fourth, and is there a fifth book? I just feel like the continuation after the third book, I've heard not great things. So I don't plan on continuing the series, don't plan on collecting the rest of the books in the series. I just don't need to keep this. It was just fine for me. So gonna get rid of this. Okay, so I think that's everything. I keep talking away from the camera. You probably can't hear me. I think that's everything on the top shelves. So we're gonna move on to these ones. I don't think anything on this shelf I'm gonna get rid of. So we'll move on over. I don't think I'm getting rid of any more. Like, this is kind of my little romance moment over here. I don't think I want to get rid of anything else there or any of my graphic novels. I want to keep all of that, I think. Obviously, these two shelves, they're gonna stay intact. I feel like if I were to have to unhaul a majority of my book collection, these would be the last two shelves I would touch. So they're fine. Marissa Meyer, Santa Clara, you're safe once again. Like anyone ever thought I would unhaul any of these books. Anyway, moving on to the next shelf. Okay, I have this problem with this book. The Atlas Six by Olive Blake. I thought this book was fine. I think I gave it 3.5 stars. I knew when I read this, because this is the like self-published version, that if I wanted to continue on with the series, I'd have to reread the traditionally published version of this book, and I just do not care to do that. I don't really care to continue on with the series. I would unhaul this if it wasn't this edition. I don't know why the fact that this is like now this like exclusive like self-published version that you can't really get unless you want to pay a lot more money for it. I don't know why that makes me want to keep it. I didn't care about this book that much. So this I'm gonna keep for now, but like eventually I feel like I'm gonna be in a mood where I'm just gonna want to get rid of everything that I've ever owned, and perhaps that will be when this book sees the unhaul pile. Anyway, moving on. Anything else on the shelf that I want to get rid of? I don't think so. I mean, did I like Rule of Wolves? Absolutely not. But I have all of the other Grishaverse books, so I'm like, I don't really want to get rid of it, so we're going to keep it for now. But I could see myself unhauling that duology eventually, because I didn't really like it that much. Even though Nikolai is my beloved, I loved him so much. That series, not great. Moving on. Okay, yeah, I think I'm going to get rid of this. There might be some other things on the shelf, but I'm not sure. I think I'm going to get rid of Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. I read this, I think that was 2020. I think it was August of 2020. That's weird. That's so long ago. Anyway, read it then, enjoyed it, had a good time, immediately bought the sequel. Still have yet to read the sequel. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I enjoyed this book enough, but I don't think I'm ever gonna revisit it. And like, I think going into the sequel, I know it's more of a companion book, but I feel like I would need to reread this to like familiarize myself with the characters again and the world. And I just don't care to do that. So I think knowing like I wouldn't want to actually reread this means that I don't really need to keep it on my shelf. So I'm gonna get rid of this, which is so sad because this is another beautiful cover, and I did like this book when I read it. I just don't feel like I need to keep it on my shelf. I also think, I don't know about this one. The Bells and The Everlasting Rose, both by Daniel Clayton. I think the series now has more books coming out. Like, I think there's a third book that came out. Haven't heard anything about it, but I really loved The Bells, which is the first book in the series. Still don't understand why the cover is like out of focus. That has bothered me since the day I bought this book. But I really enjoyed this book. When I first read it, I thought it was a very interesting world, a very interesting setup. I liked the characters. And then I read the second book and did not really like it. I found it very disappointing. And I don't plan on continuing on with the series. So I may unhaul these. I don't know. Part of me is like, what if I just keep The Bells and then get rid of this? But I also don't think I'll ever reread this. Like, I liked it at the moment, but I just don't think this is ever going to be something I revisit. So I think I might get rid of both of these. I also will have some time to think on these unhauled books, because every book that I've ever unhauled on this channel, I still technically have. I always have these grand plans of like bringing them to used bookstores to give to them, or little free libraries, or selling them online. And she never does it. So I'm probably going to have these books just added to the stack of books next to my bookshelf, and I'll have time to rethink my decision. Okay, everything else there is good because I like all those books. Next shelf. Oh, I think there's two right in a row we can get rid of. So I think I'm gonna get rid of Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. I honestly, like, I could see myself maybe continuing on with this series, but not like wanting to buy my own copies. Like, I'll just listen to the audiobooks or read the ebooks or something, get them through my library somehow. I don't really feel like I need to buy the rest of the series, and I thought this first book was just fine. So I don't know, I'm more interested in the books she's writing set in this world, but they're like adult books. Those I'm more interested in than the rest of the series. Plus I feel like people who even liked the series didn't love the final book, so I don't think I'm gonna probably continue on with this, so I don't really need to keep it. And then the other book I grabbed is The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. Has that been like that the whole time? I'm so sorry if that bothered anyone. I don't know if it was like that the whole time. Ooh, that's gonna bother me when editing. Anyway, The Last Magician. I think I'm gonna get rid of this. I did read this, well, when was that? I get all my years confused, especially 2021 and 2022. Those are the same year to me in my brain. I think it was 2021, and I liked it. I think I gave it, well, I was reading it for a secret vlog that never saw the light of day, but I was going to give it 4 stars. I did enjoy it enough, but again, at this point, I'd have to reread this book to continue on with the series, and I just don't feel like doing that. I didn't like it enough to want to revisit this story and these characters. Like, I enjoyed it, but I think my time for this series and me wanting to read it, we've moved beyond that. So I think I'm gonna get rid of this also. It's pretty covered though, and I was so excited to start that series, which does kind of make me a little upset that I didn't continue it in the moment, because now I've completely lost interest, but I was so excited to read that series. So if you think I should maybe give it another chance, let me know. And then I think the rest of the books here I want to keep. An Ember in the Ashes, should I unhaul those? No. And then the other shelf I think is also fine. It's a mess of a shelf. We're ignoring her. For a lot of reasons. She has missing books. It's just where I've shoved other things. It's just a bit of a mess, but I think everything on the final shelves are now good. So now I'm gonna go over to my TBR shelf and pick out the books I want to unhaul. I'd bring you over there, but we're already losing daylight, so I'm just going to pick the books out and then I will go through everything that I've decided to unhaul. Okay, so I just quickly went through my TBR shelf, grabbed a couple books that I want to unhaul, and also took note of some books that I think are on the chopping block. Books that if I don't read this year, I think I'm gonna need to unhaul them at the end of the year. So I'll have to come back to this video at the end of the year and see if I need to get rid of any of those books. But I am gonna talk about the books that are kind of on like the chopping block, or like books that I'm gonna unhaul if I don't read them this year, in the TBR section of this video. Right now I'm just going to share what I am definitely unhauling. So a quick recap of everything that I unhauled from my red shelves. Books I've already read that I just want to get rid of. The Upside of Unrequited by Becky Albertalli, A Song Below Water by Bethany C. Morrow, Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson, Watch Us Rise by Renee Watson and Ellen Hagen. Matson and Watson just confused my brain for a minute. I don't know if you just saw the glitch in my eyes. Anyway, Room by Emma Donoghue, Truly Devious, Wicked Fox by Kat Cho, The Bells, and also The Everlasting Rose by Danielle Clayton, Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco, and The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. So now for the 4 books that were on my TBR shelf. I haven't read these. I just know I've lost interest and I don't want to pick them up. They're books that I've had on my shelves for a few years now, so I've completely lost interest, which is a shame. I'm just not excited to read them. I want my TBR shelf to be full of books that I'm excited to read, and I'm not really excited about these books anymore. So I'm definitely going to be getting rid of Vicious Spirits by Kat Cho, which is the sequel to Wicked Fox. I've just, again, lost interest in continuing this series, unfortunately. And what's really upsetting about this is that I read Wicked Fox like right before this book came out, went to Barnes & Noble, bought this book like during its release week, and yet I never picked it up, and I think that that's such a shame. Like, I wish I had read it closer to when I bought it. I think I would have enjoyed it, especially after coming off of reading Wicked Fox and enjoying it, but unfortunately didn't get to it, and now I've just lost interest. The next book I got from a friend like a few years ago, and it kind of goes along with another book I unhauled. I think I'm gonna get rid of Save the Date by Morgan Matson. This is a signed first edition. There's stickers inside. Like, I don't need this. This should go to someone who loves Morgan Matson, and that is not me. I don't really have an interest in reading this at this point. I wouldn't have probably picked this up or any Morgan Matson up if it weren't for the fact that my friend was getting rid of a bunch of books and was just like, like take what you want. That's how I ended up with this. So yeah, I don't really have an interest. I feel like even people who love Morgan Matson, this is not their favorite, and I just don't have an interest in reading this anymore. YA Contemporary, love her work occasionally still as an adult, but I think I've just like moved on beyond YA Contemporary. I think if I want this type of story, I would search for it in the adult age category, which is fine. I think there's a lot of people who would enjoy this, whether they are in the YA age demographic or not. I just don't think this is for me at this point. I think I've moved on beyond it. I really just wanted to read at least one Morgan Matson, try her out, and I read Since You've Been Gone and thought it was fine. So I've at least read something from her and I'm good with that. And then the last two books for my TBR are books that I have had on my shelf for quite a while. One I got in 2020, one I got in 2019. I think it's the oldest book like on my TBR, the book I've had like the longest, and I just don't want to read them anymore. I've lost interest. So one of them is The Midnight Lie by Marie Rutkowski, or Rutkowski. I know how to say it, but now I'm overthinking it. I've heard really good things about this author and about this book in particular, but what I didn't know when I bought this book is that it's actually like a spin-off to another series she wrote. Knowing me, I can't just read a spin-off. I'm gonna need to go back to the original series, read that first before I can get to this, and I just never really wanted to do that. Clearly, I've had this since 2020 and I've never done it. And it's such a shame because I have heard good things about this. It is a I think a sapphic fantasy romance type of story, which does sound like something I would enjoy. I know I'm not going to read this until I read the other series, and I don't want to do that. And I just also have kind of lost interest in this book. I've had it again since 2020, have not had the desire to pick it up. So why I bought this, I don't know. I think the cover really drew me in because it is a cool cover. It also was a part of a Target like buy two get one free thing, and this was a panic buy. I think that's what happened. So yeah, I'm unfortunately gonna get rid of this, but I just know I've had it for this long. I've never picked it up. I don't want to pick it up. I should just get rid of it, and then someone else who would enjoy this type of story can pick it up and read it and love it, hopefully. And then the final book I'm unhauling, the one I've had since 2019, and I've still not picked it up. And I kept holding on to it because of the author, and I was like, no, I need to read it. I don't need to read it. I don't want to read it. And that's Wonder Woman Warbringer by Leigh Bardugo. I love Wonder Woman, love Leigh Bardugo, but I don't need this. Me and Therese were actually gonna buddy read this like 2 or 3 years ago, and Therese read it. I did not, and that was my like one motivator to pick this up. And then with Therese reading it and me not picking it up, that motivation has gone, and now I don't really want to pick this up. And I also think that this book was just gonna end up being, you know, a fine average read. I might even have liked it, but I don't think it was going to be a new all-time favorite. So a book that I was kind of putting off reading, knowing that I probably wasn't going to love it, it was just hard to motivate myself to actually pick it up. So I'm finally going to get rid of this. I've been holding on to this since 2019. She needs to go. Okay, those are all of the books I'm unhauling. I'm going to quickly count and see how many I in total am unhauling. 15, 16 books that I'm unhauling. I'm pretty happy with that. We've made some space on my shelves, made some space on my TBR shelf, and now I can finally put those stacks of books that are by my bed away where they properly belong. We know what my goals are for the year, and we've also done a bit of an unhaul. So with all of that in mind, I have pulled some books off of my TBR that I really would like to try and get to this year. Like I said, when I was unhauling books, there's definitely some books like on the chopping block, books that if I don't get to this year, I think they just need to go. And also just some books that I think will lend a helpful hand with some of my goals. They're going to be things that I think will make my goals actually happen. So we got a mix of things that I want to chat about. Okay, so we're going to start with some of my books that are on the chopping block. If I don't read them this year, they need to go. So one of them is Angel Fall by Susan E. I actually have the whole series, the whole trilogy. I just grabbed the first book, but this is one of those things where because I have the whole series, depending on how I feel about this first book is going to determine if I keep or unhaul the rest of the books. And the reason why I have the whole series in the first place, I try not to buy the whole series before I've even started it or I've only read one book. It does happen sometimes, but I try not to do that. But the reason I have the whole series is because one of my friends was getting rid of a bunch of their books and was like, just take what you want. And so this series was in with that. And the next thing I'm going to talk about was another series that I got from this friend. But I was just like, they're getting rid of them. I might as well take them and give them a try. I had recently like gone through my Goodreads, my want to read shelf on Goodreads, and had rediscovered this series and went, oh, that still sounds interesting. People give it really good reviews. I'm going to keep it on my want to read shelf. And then right after is when my friend was like, hey, do you want any of these books? And this series was there. And I was like, the stars have aligned. I need them. But that was in like 2021, I think, that friend gave me all of these books. And I still haven't read it. So the stars really align? I don't think so. But yeah, this book is so short that I think what my plan is I'm going to at least give this book a try. I'm going to attempt to read it, whether I finish the book and then want to continue on with the series or decide I don't, or I DNF it. Whatever the outcome is, I want to at least give it a try because it is on my shelves. I might as well try it before I decide to unhaul it. But if I get to the end of this year and still have not even attempted to pick this series up and give this first book a try, then I think it needs to be unhauled. And the same thing goes for the other series I have to talk about. I did bring the whole series over because I, once again, have all the books. It's a box set, so it was just easier to grab the whole thing. And that's the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series by Laini Taylor. This, again, was from the friend who was getting rid of a bunch of books, and I think it must have been 2021 that this happened because I had read Strange the Dreamer earlier that year, and I did like that duology. So I saw this and was like, well, I should give it a try, even though, like, since this series came out, I had no interest in reading this series. Even like years and years and years ago when I was just a viewer of BookTube and everyone was talking about those like classic YA series all the time, I saw these books on people's shelves all the time. These eyes on the spines, they stick with you. But I remember just always seeing people like have these books on their shelves. I would see people talk about them, but I just never felt drawn to picking them up. So why I ended up getting the whole series from this friend when they were getting rid of books, I don't know. Like, I don't really have an interest in the series. So why do I have it? I don't know, but I do have it. That's the reality. And I feel like because I have it, I need to at least give it a try. Try reading the first book, see how I feel. And similar to Angelfall, whether I want to continue on with the series or decide it's not for me, I can unhaul it. Or if I get to the end of this year and haven't even tried reading it, then it can go. But yeah, both of these series, to be honest, if I didn't have them on my shelves, they wouldn't be series I'd be picking up. So for that reason, I'm like, do I just unhaul them right away? If any of you have read either of these series and you think I should read them or unhaul them, like, let me know your opinions if you think I'm gonna like them, because that will definitely help with me deciding what I want to do. Because honestly, if I unhauled both of these right now without even giving them a try, I think I'd be okay. But I just feel like because I have the whole series, I should at least try them. These are on the chopping block. If I don't give an attempt at reading them this year, they're both going to be unhauled. And then I have a group of books that I fear that if I don't read them now, I may lose interest in them because they are all YA contemporaries. Now, I still read and enjoy YA contemporaries, but it's definitely something that over the years I become less and less interested in and pick up less and less unless it's from an author that I've read from before and really enjoy. But I just feel like the older I get, the less interested I'm going to be in picking up these books. So I feel like I need to pick them up right now before I completely lose interest. I don't want what happened with some of the other books I've unhauled in this video where I lost interest because I waited too long. I don't want that to happen with these books. So one of the books I want to read this year is Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake. I have read a YA contemporary from Ashley Herring Blake before and really enjoyed it. This is also one of my 5-star predictions from last year that I never finished, so I still want to read this. Like I said, I think it will be 5 stars, so I am excited about it. I just know that like the longer I put it off, maybe the less interested I'll become. So I want to read this. I also have We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. Both of these books are pretty short, so I feel like I could read them very quickly. I know they're gonna, I think, both pack a punch because I think these are both very like hard-hitting YA contemporaries, which is definitely more so what I want when I do pick up a YA contemporary. But yeah, I want to pick this up. I know it'll be a quick read, even though it's probably gonna be devastating. It's not very long, so I should just get to it before I lose interest. Again, along the same lines, another hard-hitting YA contemporary, we have Starfish by Akemi Dawn Bowman. I got this like in 2020, I think. I've had it for a few years, so I need to actually get to it. Some of these books, it's just like, it's a shame that they've been sitting on my shelf for this long and I haven't read them. So I want to read this as well. Next, I have Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. I read Yoke by the same author and absolutely loved it. And I had never read anything from Mary H.K. Choi before that. So I was like, I'm going to read everything she has written. And now this has sat on my shelf for multiple years and I haven't read it. Honestly, I've heard mixed things about this book and Emergency Contact, which are the other books from her that I haven't read, but I still want to give them a try, especially because I did love Yoke so much. And I feel like that had mixed reviews as well, but it just like, I don't know, something about it, it worked for me. So I feel like her books may work for me, but again, YA contemporary, I don't want to lose interest in it, so I'm gonna hopefully pick this up this year. And then another YA contemporary that I want to get to this year before I lose interest is The Chandler Legacies by Abdi Nazemian. This is Bestie Darian's like one of her favorite books, so I do want to get to it for that reason. I actually think she bought this for me. I think she bought this for me when we met a couple years ago. So regardless of whether I pick this up this year or read it or however I feel about it, I'm gonna keep this forever because it reminds me of when I met my bestie. But I do want to get to this before I lose interest. I think this has more of like I think it's a YA contemporary, but I think it has like some little mystery element to it. So I think it'll be a fun read. I feel like this might be a perfect thing to pick up in the fall. So yeah, those are some of the YA contemporaries that I'm nervous about losing interest in if I don't read like soon. So those are the ones I'm going to be prioritizing. I do have some other YA contemporaries on my shelf. Like I have some Alice Oseman books on my shelf, but Alice Oseman is one of my favorite authors. So I feel like no matter what they release, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to want to read it. So it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my YA contemporaries. I don't really have a lot anymore because I know it's not what I'm gravitating towards as a reader anymore. So I do want to read the ones that I have before I completely lose interest. And then I have another book that I have had on my shelf. It's actually a book of the month book. So I can tell you, February of 2020. We're coming on 4 years, people, that I've had this book and I have not read it. So that's really the only reason why it's on this TBR, because I still have an interest in it. I still want to read it. I've just had it for so long that like at this point it's embarrassing. So I just need to read it. And that's The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abby Daré. I just feel like this book is a little on my comfort zone. It's not within a genre that I typically reach for. So I feel like for that reason, it's been a book that I've just had on my shelf for when the mood strikes me for this type of book. But obviously that hasn't really happened over the years, or if I have, maybe I've read something through the library, but this is just like embarrassing that I still have this 4 years later and I still haven't read it. I do still want to read it though. It's not like a book that I've had forever that I'm losing interest in. I do still want to read it. So this year, I really need to pick it up. And then finally, the couple of other things that I brought over kind of go hand in hand with some of my goals for the year. So one of my goals is to read at least one classic. So I have Persuasion and Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. So I think one of these will probably be the classic that I read this year. I would love to read more than one classic, but just having at least one as a goal I think is reasonable. I think I've read a classic pretty much every year since I've been on BookTube, except for 2023. I don't think I read a classic last year, which is why this is a goal for the year. So because I want to read all of Jane Austen's books, I figured one of these will probably be the one that I pick up, also because I own them already. But there's also lots of classics that I want to read. I just am not like always in the mood to read a classic. So if I acquire some of those other ones I want to read, maybe I'll read one of those. But these are the ones that I have. So I feel like likely one of these will be read this year, hopefully. If I get in the classics mood, I don't want to force it. I just want to read what I want to read this year. But if I do get in the mood to pick up a classic, I think one of my Jane Austens will be what I do. And then the final book that I have to mention goes hand in hand with my not being intimidated by big books goal. This is a book that I stare at on my TBR and go, it is a crime that I haven't read you yet. Because it's so many people's like favorite books. Whatever year they've read it, it's like their favorite book of the year. I don't understand why I've put it off so long. I know why, actually. It's because I'm intimidated by this book. And that's Babel by R.F. Kuang. So I need to read this year. It's a shame that I have not picked this up yet. I think my plan is to get the audiobook and listen along while I physically read, and hopefully that will make me super immersed in the story and also pick up on everything and be really sucked in and understand everything that I'm reading. But yeah, I don't know. I just find like the content of this book intimidating, but also it is a bit of a chunkier book. Any book that's like over 400 pages, I'm like, I don't know how to read these anymore. I used to do that just fine. Now I'm like, if a book's over 350 pages, I'm like, what do you want from me? But yeah, obviously so many people love this book. I want to read it. I want to love it. So I need to pick it up this year. I think I have some other books on my TBR that are bigger, chunkier books that I would also like to get to this year, but this is the one that I'm like the most ashamed that I have not picked up yet. So this is definitely on the TBR for the year. Hopefully I can get to it. So obviously those are just like a handful of the books I want to get to this year, with another one of my goals being to read my physical and Kindle TBR. There's a lot of books on that shelf and on my Kindle that I want to get to, but these are the ones that I just feel like I actually have to read this year, whether they're at a risk of unhaul or me losing interest or just books that I do really want to get to and prioritize this year. These are just the select ones that I feel like I need to read in 2024. But that is everything that I wanted to chat about in this reset vlog. Everything I wanted to do to start my reading year off right. I just feel like because I've had such a mix of reading years in the past couple of years, especially 2023, it was a bit of a mess. I just want to set myself up for the most success. So I hope you enjoyed watching this. I feel like it could be fun in future reset vlogs because I do sometimes do them monthly. I was also thinking of maybe starting to do them seasonally. We will just see, but I do want to continue to do reset vlogs throughout the year. And in those vlogs, we can kind of check in on my goals for the year. And if I'm reading the books that I put on this TBR, we can just see how I'm doing with some of the things that I've set myself up for in this year. But yeah, I would love to know in the comments below any reading goals you had for the year, or if you did a little reset and refresh for your reading year in 2024, anything you're excited to read. Just let me know all of the things down below in the comments. But that is going to be it for my New Year reset vlog. So thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.